Hello and welcome. I'm Mikayla Nembhard, and I'm here interviewing the one and only Danielle Strickland. Danielle, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's a joy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Danielle, okay, so we're talking about how research shows us that my generation wants to have a real meaningful impact on the world. In my experience, that usually starts when there's someone in my life who actually believes I can have an impact. And when you were younger, was there someone like that for you who empowered you and believed in you? And how did that shape the way you looked at yourself and your ability to make an impact?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question for me because I had a bit of a wayward childhood. So I feel like it's not sort of the normal, answer. But I do remember this one weird moment when I was in a courtroom deciding the future of my life, whether I would be incarcerated for a long time or if I would be released to go to a drug treatment program.
Yeah.
And the judge in the case actually went in the direction of the drug treatment program and said, now I don't remember this, but my mother wrote it down.
Wow.
Because the judge said, I need you to go and be the leader you were meant to be. But I think even just those words spoken over me in that really weird place of like not thinking of myself in that way at all.
Right.
And then this judge sort of even distance from my life, but able to prophetically say something of value and worth, and seeing that this misbehaved, this misdirected capacity was actually leadership misdirected. I think that mattered a fair bit.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. I want to say, like, even for me, I think someone that's impacted my life too is my mom. She is the biggest cheerleader. She literally cheers me on. She pours into me. She tells me that I can do it. I have like impact. My words have impact and meaning, and that to not shy away from the spotlight.
Yeah.
So, and to like actually walk forward into it. So it's
like
amazing.
a queen.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You know her so well. Literally a warrior. Yeah, literally. Yeah. Oh man. So I have another question for you. So what advice do you have for me and others in my generation to, as we step into the future?
Yeah, I think some of those things that you just shared about what impacted you about your mother, what I would love for this generation to understand is that what they do, what they think, what they see, what they feel matters.
Yeah.
And not to shy away from the opportunities that they do have whenever they have them to speak up, to say so, to give their perspective, to share their heart. Because I think that their perspective, their heart, their feelings, what they're experiencing right now matters. And actually are going to be, they're going to be leading the way of the future. Whatever it is, use your influence for good wherever you can. Absolutely. And you practice that so that you're ready for that as those opportunities come.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Thank you for that. Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. Okay. I have one thing unique about the Open Generation study is that Barna partnered with World Vision to interview teens in more marginalized communities who don't have the same access to technology and often are underrepresented in a study of this like size. This included youth within communities the World Vision partners with in Brazil, Honduras, Indonesia, Kenya, Philippines, and Syrian refugees living in Lebanon. Not only was that important to World Vision, Barna found that teens worldwide said it was very important that all people have a chance to speak and be heard, and that people are allowed to participate in making the decisions that affect their lives. So Danielle, why is this so important? And in what ways do you think this models the way of Jesus?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, what an awesome reflection from people who maybe also feel the sting of being unheard or feeling invisible. And so one of the neat things about that study's reflections and outcomes in terms of hearing that pattern being told is that I feel like the entire Bible is a story of God going out of his way to get in the way of marginalized, invisible people and centering them in the story. So in some ways, it's one of the most encouraging things in the world because what that generation's desire is for is actually the exact same desire God has as well. Which is to center people who have been decentered by society. So I love that those things match. And the other thing I was going to say is one of the things I've been most challenged by and learning from the person of Jesus is how engaged he was in using questions to hear from people and to give people autonomy over their own decisions. So even when Jesus is, someone's yelling out for healing, for example, and Jesus will say, okay, come here.
Yeah.
And then when the person comes here, he'll say, what would you like me to do? Now, I mean, I would just assume heal it. Like, obviously, he wants to be healed. The guy's blind, like whatever it is.
Yeah.
But Jesus will say, what do you want me to do?
Right.
Because them expressing their decisions and their choice, and even to hear their voice, is somehow restoring the way they were made. Humans were made with leadership capacity, with influence, with choice, with autonomy, with decisions that they could make, with a voice to be heard. And Jesus is not content to just fix whatever problem they have. What he's really after is to give them back the agency they've always had as human beings. So I think for that to be the ask is like, yay, that's what God wants to do. That's what Jesus modeled how to do.
Yeah.
And maybe in this season, what we're doing is rediscovering what we were always supposed to be doing anyway.
I even think, even for like even my generation too, just speaking on behalf of them, there's a lot of our previous kind of like leaders. I mean, they're still in power right now, but they're making decisions for us. So it's like they're not really listening into what we have to say. We kind of feel like we're not being heard, and it's if we feel stuck. I think that's what it is. We feel stuck. So it's that that agency. I love that you said that turning it around and saying like, you know what? No, let's ask you the question. Like, how do you think about? Like, what do you think about this? Like, how do you feel? So absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. And even like, what are the solutions?
Right.
Because how am I going to come up with, solutions to people feeling marginalized and invisible and unheard if I've never really been marginalized, invisible, or unheard? Right. I don't know. So it's also the solutions to the problems come from the very people who experience those problems, not from the people who don't.
Right.
So Mikayla, some awesome questions that you asked me that I got to answer, and now I'd like to ask you some.
Hit it.
I want to ask you, as a leader, what are the best things I could do to empower young people around me?
Man, that's a good question. Well, Danielle, look at you. Look what you're doing. Like, I would say just continue to do that. Continue to pave that way. Continue to open doors and to speak to things that are like, that have been there for so long, like those structures, those racist structures, those misogynist structures, like just continue to tear that down. Because people like me, like young people like me, are seeing that and we're like, we're empowered. We're empowered by you, and we feel like you believe in us too, and that pushes us to want to continue to keep like opening doors for ourselves as well, and I just love that you also kind of like have that open hand, they're like, come on, let's go. So I appreciate that from you, and I pray for more people like you in this generation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That's even just that like intentional inclusivity is so powerful.
Yeah.
And that's one of the patterns of Jesus's ministry too that impacts me a lot. Like I always say, Jesus went out of his way to get in the way of the right people. But if you look around and all you see are people like you at the center of the story, then take a page out of the life of Jesus and go out of your way to get in the way of people who are not like you in places that don't reflect your values and things like that.
So Danielle, this has been such a great conversation. And as we end, I know you've had the chance to do such great work around the globe, and you've met and worked with some pretty amazing young people. And you recently told me about Serafina. Can you tell me a little bit about her?
So Serafina probably is a really good representation of the best of the generation in terms of that desire that generation has to be heard, to use their voice, to change things, to activate in their own local communities. She's modeling. Like she's actually living that out. So as a young woman in a context in Africa, seeing injustice happen, her desire, and actually her stated desire, is to end violence against children. Right. Like it's not a bad life.
It's amazing.
That's not a bad thing to give your life to. I think at that age, my desire was just like to stay out of jail.
Fair enough.
So what could God do with a young person who is dedicated their entire life?
Yeah.
And another thing that she says, which has impacted me a lot, is I want to use all the influence I have for good. Wow. And again, even just to name that young and to dedicate yourself. And then the other thing I think that exemplifies the generation, which I think I'm learning from a lot, is it's fine to have lofty ideals, but it's a whole different thing to have amazing ideals and then get to work.
Yeah.
And Serafina is one of those women that has these incredible ideals. Like, I also want to end violence against children everywhere, so like count me in.
Right.
But she's begun.
Yeah.
You know, she's begun the work. As a young woman who was told, you don't count, you can't do anything, life's just this way, this is cultural, it's not your business.
Right.
She's like, it is my business, and watch.
Watch me work.
Yeah, watch me work. And I think that spirit, belief system, faith, and then also just that audacity to get to it.
Yeah.
You know, sign me up. I want to be led by Serafina.
Yeah, I feel you. That's me too. Me too. Man, Danielle, thank you so much for sitting down with me and having this important conversation. Now let's listen to the conversation with Serafina.
Well, hey, Serafina, it's so good to see you in person, even though it's on a screen. I'm so thrilled to meet you after being inspired by your story and talking a lot about how your example is one for a generation to look to. Can you tell me a little bit? You've been an advocate, a leader against child marriage, both in your own community in Ghana, but also to world leaders, using your voice with great authority. What has this taught you about the power your generation has to make an impact in the world?
Thank you, Daniela. And I'm also very happy to meet you and to share these great experiences with you. Yes, so actually, through the advocacy works I've been doing and then meeting other young children around the world, listening to my generation, I can see that there is a lot of potentials in this generation. You see, we are in the 21st century where the spread of knowledge is so quick. Within an instant, knowledge is spread vast across the whole globe. Yes, so I actually see this generation to be full of so much potentials and so much power. And I can see that if this generation would focus their mind onto eliminating violence against children, they can actually do it. If we all agree together and come together as one and then purpose in our mind to do something, we can do it because we are full of so much power. Yeah, I strongly believe that.
What's been your greatest challenge in becoming an advocate?
Oh, actually, my greatest challenge was the fact that I was a female, and that not being enough, I was also from a village in the northern region where the voices of females is considered nothing. The voices of females is not heard. Yeah, so that was my greatest challenge, being a female and then also being in a community where the voices of girls are not heard. But all through it, I was able to sail out, and then I am now making my voice known.
That's so beautiful. I mean, the story that we're looking at is how women listening to God and doing what God said were the start of one of the greatest deliverance stories in the Bible. And and so we see echoes of that in the way that you said no to the things that you can't live with, to these children being given over into marriage. What is your hope or advice for other young people around the world?
There is this famous saying I like, and I actually got it from a book I read, a novel I read. I actually love reading novels, yeah. And it is Law 34, and it is found in Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. Yeah, so the Law 34 states that be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king, to be treated as one. So indeed, as young leaders, as children out there, we must always rise up to demand for what is rightly ours before others around can come up to support us. And so in any situations we find ourselves, to my colleague young leaders out there, never be afraid. Just believe in yourself, stand up. And once you stand up for yourself, you will get people to support you. That is the basic principle of everything. Once you are able to stand up and demand for what is rightly yours, you are going to get supporters.
Serafina, I want to thank you. Not just personally. Personally, I'm inspired by you. You keep me hopeful. I'm thrilled that you're leading the future. I really am. I feel really good about it. I also am challenged enough to try to make a better way for more and more people of your generation to do what it is you've been called to do. So thank you so much, but not just me personally, on behalf of the pastors and the leaders who are going to be using this resource and who are inspired by you, and then the tons of young people who need examples like you to look to. I just want to thank you so much for the way that you not just communicate well about these principles and advice and hope and experience, but how you're living your life well. And it matters so much. And we're so grateful. And we're really believing that your example is going to make a big difference, not just where you are, but all around the world. Thank you.
Thank you too.